following podcast is recorded and produced by Emerge, a media creators co-op, in affiliation with the network at bicbp-radio.com.
Question: who is lying to you today? The media? Social media? Big business? Politicians? Actually, it's probably all of them. That led me to create this podcast named They're All Lying to Us. We do research and present findings and opinions on political, social, and cultural topics to inform our communities about what's really going on. You know, stuff that affects everyday American life. We also invite you to share your voice and help us recreate real-life interactions as they were had in the pre-digital era. I'm your host for these conversations. My name is Andy. Hello, everybody. Today is July 11th, 2024, the recording date for They're All Lying to Us, or as we call it, Talus. As a reminder, you can find some of our old podcasts and blog posts and such and information about us at our website, www.lyingtous.com. And you can find prior editions and this edition of podcasts at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or with the video included with our lovely faces at our YouTube channel. Look for lyingtous.com or Talus, and you should be able to find it on the YouTube channel. Anyways, July 11th, we've been hanging around waiting to see what's going to happen with our presidential election. Big news of today. And of course, the topic in the past 2 weeks since the initial presidential debate is whether or not Joe Biden is going to be in the race, stay in the race, should stay in the race, etc. So, you know, and as I notice by the title of our show, They're All Lying to Us, I've noticed that there's some suspect talking coming from Joe Biden himself, White House people that support Joe Biden and his campaign, the Democratic politicians in Washington, as to whether or not they think Joe Biden should be the candidate. They sort of, for the most part, except with a few exceptions, been towing the company line on it, saying nothing to see here, everybody move along. So a perfect topic for They're All Lying to Us is the latest example of our favorite group of liars, our politicians, telling us some untruths and asking us to not believe what our own eyes see. With that, and without much further ado, I'd like to bring in for our conversation today, very early in today's podcast, Rich.
Hey.
Dialing in from Niagara Falls, New York. I am down in Sarasota, Florida. I guess we're both living in some hot and humid climates this year, or at least for the moment. Rich has a prospect of it cooling off in the next few days, but down here it's we're going to be hot, humid, and 90 plus degrees every day, and probably now until the end of September, unless we get a hurricane that blows through and saves us. So, in any event, Joe Biden,
Sleepy Joe.
Yeah, Sleepy Joe. All those names that they've been saying for 3 and 4 years have now come full circle. And the night of that debate, I was watching something else with my wife and my daughter, and I was like, should we click over and see? So we clicked over and saw for a few minutes. And there I was looking at the blank stare and some incoherent statements of Joe Biden. And I just couldn't watch it. I mean, it was just, I hate most of the pomp and circumstance. I mean, I follow politics, but some of the ritualistic politics, like, these events with the debates and stuff, I'll kind of pay half attention to. And this one, I said, well, let me just tune in and see what's going on. And I was just totally uncomfortable by it. And quite frankly, I was, after that, I was expecting that, that was kind of the end for him. I mean, if you watched it for any amount of time, my mind dialed back to my multiple grandparents who went through aging process and lost their minds and some of their physical faculties over time. My parents who went through the same stuff. So I've been seeing that since I was 7 years old, and I've seen it multiple times over and over again. And there it was right in front of me all again. And it was the guy running for president. And yeah, Trump was lying his ass off as usual and all that other stuff, but he was at least in the ball game, even if he was not playing by the same rules. But Joe just wasn't there, and I was expecting to go out that night or the next morning and drive on the highway here in Florida, and where they have those overhead signs. And we have, I don't know if everybody else is familiar with these, as familiar as we are in Florida with the silver alert. You've heard of the amber alert signs that go up when a kid goes missing. This is the silver alert sign that goes up. And I was
Nobody's
expecting
seen
to
him.
see like somebody's taken the
Right.
presidential limousine and we don't know where Joe Biden is. Please tell me if you've seen him, and tell him to phone home. And then when he gets here, we need to take the car keys away from him. But of course, in true fashion, he's still currently 2 weeks later in the race. And it's just, the whole thing is just another frustration of a system that just seems to not want to tell us the truth.
Right.
And I don't know. Rich, any initial thoughts from you?
I was lucky enough to be in Ohio golfing.
I should say
For the
incapacitated.
debate.
I'm like, hey, so was Joe.
My buddies invited me to a tournament out of town, so I was down there, and my phone was blowing up because we were back at the hotel by that point. We were down in the hotel bar, typical terrible hotel bar. And my phone's blowing up because people are texting me, "Are you watching this?" And I'm like, "I'm not watching this." So later on, when I went back to the hotel room, I did go and I started seeing some things, and I was like, "Oh God!" And so once I got back that weekend, I did go and watch a ton of content, and made my own decisions. And there are some things that kind of reminded me of, like you said, recognizing when an older person has gotten to the point where it's time to take the car keys away, and it's time to just spend time with your family. And it reminded me a lot of like the 86 presidential election, where people had questions
Oh,
about
you mean
Reagan.
84, right? Yeah.
What did I say? 84. What did I say? 86. I'm sorry.
86,
84.
yeah.
Was Reagan's second election, and a lot of people had concerns about, and I think he was okay at that point, but by the middle of his second term, there was Reagan had clearly lost a step, and he wasn't even that old. He was in his 70s comparatively. Like, I forget how old he was at that point. And then you remember, like, within a couple of years of him no longer being president, Nancy had to come out and say, he's no longer going to be appearing in public. So clearly he didn't decline in 2 years. He started to decline during his second term. And you can do a lot of things while you're declining in health, mentally and physically, but being president of the United States is not one of them.
Well, I think, no, actually,
you can write books and you can like Tony Bennett was singing, and that's fine. But like, that's great. You can be an actor. You can do all these other things. You could, not play sports, I suppose, but you shouldn't be running, the country with the largest GPA in the world. And you shouldn't be running with a country that so I'm not saying that all old people should be locked up in a room someplace. I'm saying that you shouldn't be allowed to be president. And I think the cover up is worse than the crime, so to speak. I feel like that people have been saying things, and I think that they've been hiding from his decline.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's in part true. And there's a lot of people around him who don't want to own up to it because they have skin in the game. If you're the people that work on his team, you work in the White House. I mean, your right. job and your livelihood and your next 4 years is tied to him. Maybe Jill likes the lifestyle. And the only thing I'll slightly differ with you on this is I think he is up to the job of being president, because when you're president, we have proof of it, that people don't have to be all there when they're president. And you have a lot of people around there filling in for it. So the job of president, a lot of people are around you and they can cover up for it. Whether Nancy Reagan and Jill can come in and do the Nancy Reagan routine, or Edith Wilson.
I was just going to say, President Wilson's wife literally was running the country when President Wilson had a stroke.
After he had a stroke, like the last 2 years of his presidency.
And I remember watching,
FDR wasn't in great shape either at the end of his term, his final term.
But the difference with FDR was it was physical. Like
Yes, but I
mentally, by everything that I've ever read about FDR, and I love reading about FDR and his relationship with Churchill, and I've deep dived this stuff, and by every report everything I've ever read, that yes, physically he was falling apart, but mentally FDR was still there. Like, he knew what was going on. There was no decline in his mental
right.
capacities, and
What
I'll, I mean, he was, I mean, he had obviously been in dire physical straits for a long time, but
what I was getting toward
yeah,
to really, Will, is that the the job of president he could probably do in some sense, because there's team of people around there doing it. The job that he can't do is running for president, because that requires you to get out there, be in public. I mean, it is important to be a good communicator and to be on call as president in a lot of ways, but we've had a lot of presidents who have spent a lot of times on golf courses, done a lot of other things, and been checked out, if not mentally checked out during it. Like we said, they've been filled in.
well,
But his job of running for president, I mean, that's a lot when you have to do
the
the job of
biggest
president and add
criticism,
that, and you have to be sharp on your toes,
yeah,
because Trump is running circles around you with stories that that you could have a team of 1,000 fact checkers on trying to figure out what the reality is. It's even and he was just like outmatched until he basically said, "Yeah, we killed Medicare," or whatever he said. And I was like, "What?" Like, and the Trump people are already doing commercials off that. So all I'm saying is, I don't think he should be president either, in his condition. If he stays in the race, I think it's basically the
it's
it's kind
the
of like
deep
really
state. Yeah.
Kamala's the person that's being evaluated, I think, in large part, because I just can't
But
see him
that,
making 4.5 years.
my frustration with all of this is that if he can't do the job, like, then get out now. And I don't understand why there isn't anyone in his life. I'm not talking about his handlers. Why there isn't anyone in his family,
Yep.
or like his friends, whether it's his buddy President Obama, or somebody going up to him and saying, "Listen, man, like, for the greater good, you got to pull out now." Because, and at the end of the day, whether you like Joe Biden or not, you can admire his career and his dedication to public service. And I would say that to just about every elected politician. Most of them, I think, got in for the right reasons. And if you spend that much time doing it, I wouldn't want to do that job. So I don't understand why there isn't somebody that's going up to him and saying, like, go spend some time. You've done enough.
Yeah,
Bo would want you to enjoy your final years. I wish someone
absolutely,
would say that to him,
absolutely.
and you've earned it. And to me, like, that's kind of like, I wish someone would say that. And I would love it if he literally, like, got out now so that people could get themselves ready, so that at the convention, the Democrats can decide in a true democracy. I think you can inspire a lot of people at the convention if the convention came about who really should be the nominee. And we have to have a little mini debate, and then the delegates get to decide, because that's why we have delegates. And because there's obviously not going to be a primary, so they have to do it at the convention. And then let them have a process. Let people come out and speak. Get rid of all those other stupid speakers that they have on Tuesday
Right,
that nobody cares about, and
right,
let each one go up and make their case.
right.
Whether it's Mayor Pete or Governor Whitner or Gavin Newsom or George Clooney or whoever it is wants to come in
Oprah, don't
and,
forget Oprah.
hey, you know what? Michelle Obama, whoever, let anybody, and and to be honest, I think there's a lot of people, because it would be completely public. It would be on
Oh
every
yeah,
channel for a week, and it would really say the Democrats really are about
democracy.
really democracy. And there would be a lot of independents who would say, you know what? I'm going to give whoever this person is a shot. And that might be the thing. And if the deep state or the deep Democratic Party is more interested in maintaining their power, even if they lose the White House, then, this country's, that's the problem with our political parties anyway.
Right.
And young people in general aren't real fond of this guy as the nominee. The ones that are consider themselves left or extreme left or liberal or whatever you want to call it. So in my mind, I think that you could inspire a younger generation that there's a chance that democracy still. I mean, I know it's not really democracy because we're not voting on
It's
who
a
the nominee is
representative
going to be.
democracy. It's
But
it's
but
really not that different from our government, right?
sure,
These are
right.
people who are
And that's why we have the
elected us,
delegates.
but
That's
right.
why we have the delegates. And the delegates are regular people. They're not.
Yes.
Yes, they're political people, but they're just regular people. It's not like, there's not a lot of like part-time. They're people that work in politics, and we've kind of elected those people, in a sense. So in my mind, it would be a great thing. It would also make it very difficult. If it ends up being Whitner or Harris, it would be very difficult for Trump to be too Trumpy with her, with a female nominee, because he's already got a lot of women that are against him anyways because some of his actions and some of his statements and some of the people that are
front and center, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, just all that's not just there's all of that.
Oh yeah.
He had to be very careful because he could attack an old guy. He could attack Newsom because of being a California
the old men fighting.
liberal.
That makes it for a good movie,
right? But attacking, it's bad optics for him to kind of go after. He has to be careful about how far he goes with a female nominee.
Well, and either that, I mean, also you're getting somebody, you mentioned young people and stuff like that. You're getting somebody a lot closer to the rest of the universe's generation. I mean, most people have said this is, as far as polling goes, this is not the matchup they wanted to see again.
Nobody wants this matchup. This is like,
great.
80%
thinks Biden should drop, should not be running should drop out from running for president. Like the numbers are astronomical. And I just think there's so many better options, and if you're the Democratic Party from a strategy perspective, if you're looking at rolling out a new candidate, they're obviously going to have to be younger.
Right.
Anybody under consideration is probably 20 years or more younger. So you clear that up, straight away.
Right.
And you also, the 3.5 years of the other side talking down Biden, not just from his age. I mean, right. I don't know about what you see up there, but aside from silver alerts on the highway, I also see people still with bumper stickers that say "fuck Biden." All that. Let's go, Brandon. All that shit and criticisms. Everybody else kind of has to be disassociated from that, and they have to come up with a whole new line of thinking about how to attack the new person.
Well, let me give you an example of New York State. So obviously I live in New York State, and I don't know how much you're following New York State, but there was some polling in New York State that the election was within the margin of error that Trump could win New York State.
That's crazy.
Because of Joe Biden being the nominee. To the point that the lieutenant governor came out and said that Joe Biden should step down. I think that, obviously if New York State were to go to a Republican in the election, it's over. There's not enough swing states to handle the Electoral College swing New York State. I forget how many electoral votes New York is, but that you're not making that up with Wisconsin and Georgia, or it's too hard. So in my mind, like that is a sign. I think Dick Durbin, who's the second most powerful senator, right? Is he the supreme? What's he consider the?
I don't know what they call. I don't know what they're called, like a whip or something like that. Or
whip. I think he's the majority whip or something. Like he said it. I mean, I think that there's definitely. I don't know why it's kind of reminds me of when a politician's like, "Oh, I'm not resigning." I'm not, and then okay, I'm resigning. So I'm. It's weird because it's Friday and it's nothing happens on a Friday in politics. but the NATO conference was finishing today, and I think this afternoon at 5:00 or something is supposed to be. He's supposed to be in a press conference, and
Yeah.
that's what my son's been saying. It's like we don't see Biden answer questions, and that's a problem. That's a problem for me. That to me is a glaring sign that he can't handle a press conference. We don't see him in the. You don't even see him in the press room.
Well, I've heard reports that when he was even with a friendly, he was doing a friendly after this debate with the MSNBC morning people,
Right.
with Morning Joe and Mika over there. He, who are still defending him, but they, there was a report that like Biden was, it had to be ad hoc, so he didn't have everything canned, but there's reports that they heard like shuffling of papers and things like that, like he was
Someone's writing.
looking through things for the canned
Someone's writing an
answers.
answer on the dry erase
He's looking
board
for the
for him
cheat
and
sheet,
holding it
basically,
up.
right?
There's got a guy with a cue card over here, like
Right. Yeah, right, exactly. Somebody's so there's all these. I don't know, and that came from New York.
I mean,
So I mean,
the bigger picture of this is, and again, just for anyone who's watching, I am not a registered Republican. I'm not a registered Democrat. I am, so I don't get to vote in primaries because I'm not a registered in any party. So my problem is the debate and everything since then, and actually for the last 2 months. I have no idea what the Democrats' policies are. I have a sense of what Trump's policies are if he wins, but we're not talking about any policies. We're not talking about inflation. We're not talking about climate control. We're not talking about anything. We're not gun control, the border. We get, there's a lot of fear mongering about Project 2025, and which is a terrible, scary thing, and who's behind it. But no one's, even in the debate, like not one of the answers that either one of them gave was challenged by CNN.
yeah, that was the format, I guess, was part of the problem with it. But
I mean, that's it. Okay, so why the Democrats?
Myself, I long for the days of a Tim Russer to come out there and ask the tough questions.
Why on earth the Democrats, Biden's people in this case, would have agreed to allow to have that type of format? It's hilarious to me. Like, and that's why those people need to be out
back and forth, because maybe they didn't think he was up to the task. I mean, there's a weirder thing about, like, this was like the earliest presidential debate like they've ever had. Like,
well, that was a great idea.
Right. Yes. Like, which makes me wonder is, like, was somebody from the Biden side sitting there going, let's put him up there and have him fail so that everybody can see what we're dealing with? Or did they sit there and say, gosh, if we have to wait 3 more months for him to go out there and make a public appearance where he has to be spontaneous, we're fucked. So let's have him go out now while we still think there's a chance he can hold it together. I don't know. I mean,
it's funny because it's July and the election's in November, obviously. And that is an eternity in politics.
Oh, yeah.
That's an eternity. So I think if you get a new candidate by September 1st, as long as that person can talk about, listen, I'm stepping in. This is what I'm going to do. Ignore all the noise and all the other stuff. Like, I don't care what he says about this, and I'm that. These are the policies that I'm going to implement as president. I'm going to do this about immigration. I'm going to do this about inflation. Whether they do it or not doesn't matter. But I'm like, these are the things, and say, I'm not having any conversations about Joe or his kid or his emails or any of that crap. I don't want to hear about any of that. I'm here now. I'm the nominee. This guy over here, I'm not going to even talk about all his arrests and felonies and all the I'm going to talk about, like, what I want to do and the problems that this country's facing. And it's going to be very hard because Trump can just come at him and attack him, and everybody can attack him. He's like, I don't care about any of that. This is what I'm focused on. And because unless you bring in someone that's got someone who's really problematic because of something in their life. But realistically, I don't think that person would get the nomination at the convention. you
Yeah,
know.
I get it.
And if
I
they have a good vice president too, that can, because you're going to have to hit those battleground states, um, uh, and that's why I think Whitner's a great choice, just because you get Michigan back.
yeah,
And I like her. I like her. I like the way she speaks. I think she's intelligent. I think she's a good governor.
yep,
Um, I think you get a lot. She's very pro union, which I think you get a lot of unions behind her.
yep.
Like I said, she's gonna she's gonna be a tough person for Trump to try to find
She is
something.
tough. She's a tough person.
Yeah, and she can say things like, "Yeah, when I was president, some of your followers wanted to assassinate me."
Right.
And you never said anything against them. Like, she can just head
I
him
didn't say
on,
anything about Mike Pence either.
and again, it'll be interesting. Like, again, if you could get I don't know who the vice presidential candidate would be, but like, maybe someone younger, maybe someone, that's got a big future in the party ahead of them. And because you're not so concerned about the vice president being, taking
Right.
over if you've got a younger nominee. And I think it flips the script. And I'm hoping that maybe they wanted to get this bad because that was the only way to get him out. I'm hoping that that's really been the plan all along. I don't believe that, but,
Yeah.
because I don't think that these people are not, they're not, they know what you said it at the very beginning. I think many of these people are only concerned about being in charge of their organization. They really don't care what's best for the country. They care about their clout, their power. And I think that is why they're holding on longer than most people think they should.
Very
The George Clooney thing was big, though. I made a joke about George Clooney, but like, that was a big thing. Him coming out and saying what he did, because let's be honest, it's George Clooney. So like, he's a celebrity, even though I don't know the last time he made a good movie, but like, he's a big name. And I like those Ocean's 11 movies. So he must know what he's talking about. So, but no, but when a person that we know is active in politics comes out and literally changes his mind about someone that he had a fundraiser for, like, oh God, like he's not like, why would he do that if he didn't really believe it? I mean, it's hard to dispute that point of view when he comes out. You can say, well, I don't like these actors. You go shut up and act. That's great. But he's coming out and saying that this guy shouldn't be doing the job. Like, so clearly he's got his concerns. And I think it's hard to dispute when that outsider type person has something like that to say. Like, it's weird,
Well, he's got no skin in the game, which frees him up in terms of the political game.
Yeah.
You have all the, Democrats up there kind of twiddling their thumbs and giving you the nothing to, we're with Joe, riding with Biden. They're like, and it's just it's an insult to anybody who's, older than 3 years old and can see what's going on here. I mean, it's
Right.
it's just silly. You reminded me when you're talking about how quickly something can change or whatever like that. And I was thinking of this. There's this governor from Louisiana, Edwin Edwards. And I just remember the quote that he said when he was running for governor. This was like in the 80s of Louisiana, and he boasted that the only way I can lose this election is if I'm caught in bed with either a dead girl or a live boy. And maybe before all this, the only way, if Joe Biden was 10 years younger or 15 years younger and of sound mind, maybe there wasn't a way he could lose it. Now I'm like, I don't know if there's a way he can win it.
Well, I mean, elections can change very quickly, and I know it's harder. I don't think anybody's going to say, to me, it's not about how many people, let's say, and I don't know what the percentages are. Let's say that there's, 100 people that we're going to vote. Okay. The whole country's 100 people. And we know that there's a certain percentage in that 100 that are going to vote for Trump. And then there's a whole electoral colleges and all that too. So just, you can break this down for each of these states, that the candidates have to win those states. The amount of people out of that 100 percentage wise that have not decided, is small. But of those two parties, there's a lot of people that just don't plan to vote because they don't want to vote for X person. So there are Republicans who have come out and said they're not voting for Trump. Not a lot, but there is a percentage. He will probably not have the same turnout that he had last time. I think he will get less votes. And then on the Biden side, I think unfortunately because of some of his actions, like in Michigan specifically, they don't like his stance with Israel and Gaza, so he's lost some people. And then also some people don't want to vote for him because they think he's too old. So you got to get those people back. So those are where you're going to you got to get people to come out. It's about turnout. So you need a young person or younger person that's going to get people to want to come out and vote. And to me, like, that is really why ultimately people are not going to come out and vote. They're not going to vote because, well, we need Biden because of Trump. That's not a policy. That's not a campaign slogan. That's not a reason
at this
to
point,
get me to go vote.
If that is your main campaign slogan, is we're not the other guy, because the other guy does X, Y, and Z. Biden can't even make that message. He can't even carry the message. He doesn't have the capacity to make the argument at this point. And that's a real
You mentioned
problem.
that he can't really campaign. You know, he can't campaign, yeah. And that was the big criticism of Hillary, that she didn't go places. When she was running, she barely campaigned. She's unlikable, but she also did nothing in battleground states to make herself likable. You know, she didn't go and do the things. There's tons of reports and stories that I've read about her not running much of a campaign. She really thought she had this in the bag. Like it's when she did that, and it's like, and I think that, you know, we have the disenfranchised folks of that election that never wanted her because she wasn't likable. And then even though Bernie tried to get the folks that were supporting him to come out and vote, just didn't, because people Democrats had a very bad taste in their mouth about superdelegates and the way that primary was run, and that we're still paying for that, you know, if you know, as a country, you know, in my mind.
I mean, unlike you, I've been a Democrat since birth, but I'm not the left Democrat. I'm a very moderate Democrat. There are Republicans that I would have and would consider voting for in certain circumstances, and there's definitely if I ever go to a function that is with the Democratic Party, I am at odds with pretty much most everybody there. So I am not a good fit for the Democrats. But when I did talk to Democrats in 2020 and before that election, and everybody's sitting there telling me, "Oh, Elizabeth Warren," and I'm like, no, just forget about it, you know. And I said Joe Biden's the way to go, and eventually it came around to that, and he won. This time I'm looking at it, and I don't look at it from, I'm not, you know, like you said, it's about a different group of people that's what we're suggesting, is if you want to win on one side, is you have to cater. That's the group that you're trying to cater to, the group that either doesn't show up or isn't sure who they're going to vote for, is on the fence. And those are the groups. That's the 20% out there that's maybe available to sway this thing one way or the other, if it's that much. And
it's gonna be about turnout for sure. And and the other thing is, there's a lot of the thing about presidential elections are kind of interesting, is that when you think about it, there's also a lot of Senate and congressional seats, of course, that are always going up the same amount every 2 years. So there's a lot of that to consider too, in terms of states that have senators, and it's too early to even kind of pay attention to, you know, like, well, looks like this state's going to flip, or this state's going to, you know, this guy's taking over for that guy, and, you know, all that stuff. It's kind of early to determine some of that. And it's funny because I don't think whoever wins is going to end up with both the House and the Senate. I don't think we're going to end up with one party controlling all three, entities. So all this stuff about, I'm sick of hearing that this is the most important election of my life. Like, I'm sick of hearing about it because in 2 years, let's assume the worst case person gets in and he's just awful. Either one of them. What's going to happen is the House will switch because they always lose. They almost always lose seats 2 years in. It happened to Biden, not as bad as other times, or as bad as people expected it to be. But I do believe that no matter what happens, whoever wins and who doesn't, whatever, I don't think this is the end of democracy. I really don't. Because eventually there will be another election. Yes, there's a lot of terrible things going on the right side of things that I think most people should have some concerns about. But I don't think this is the last election in the history of the United States or something like that some people are out there saying.
I mean, if you look at like the Project 2025 stuff, I think that's pretty scary. I think with the Supreme Court, with some of the things that they've done, I think that's, at least on the individual right side of things, I think that's been fairly scary and not holding.
But many of those things are, the Supreme Court's a whole nother animal, and we're stuck with that for a while. So
right. Which could
I would argue
further in that direction if
I agree. And a lot of people are like, well, if this is the problem that a lot of younger people who are savvy with politics are like, okay, he could have expanded the Supreme Court and didn't. He had a fair amount of clout to do that. And I tried to read a little bit to see how hard it would have been for him to do that, but I think he could have got away with it. He could have tried to make Puerto Rico a state and picked up 2 senators. There's a lot of things he could have played the game with Biden while he was president, and he just didn't. And I don't know if that's because he's taking naps. I don't know if it's because he just didn't want to leave the status quo as is. I don't know. There's a lot of, those are extreme ideas, but like there is a fair amount of support for those things. And a lot of younger people would have gotten behind it and they would have liked him because they would have said, okay, he's really doing things, because the young people really kind of came out and saved his ass 2 years ago, as well as 4 years ago. And, now he's lost a lot of those young people. A lot of them are not going to vote because they just don't want to vote for, their great grandpa. And that's because they're disappointed that he didn't do some things that he didn't do enough. He just didn't.
Yeah. If he had been, I guess, as dirty as and as shitty as politics is, if he had, that other guy from the Republicans who has stood out in public and with a face that's gone blank and his mouth hanging open and not being able to speak, and I'm talking about Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
He manipulated the system into no Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court. He manipulated the system before in multiple, in many different ways. And maybe that's what you're right in that respect. Is it maybe, he wasn't
Ginsburg,
even in,
for example, though. But Ginsburg, for example, when Ginsburg was getting ill, the same thing happened with her. Why didn't anyone say to her family, like, listen, you're sick,
right?
And let's not take a chance that
just old.
You need to get out and get out, and so we can replace you, because right now we would be able to replace you, and we didn't. And now so there's a seat that we lost, and they should have not accepted the whole thing. Well, we're going to wait because it's too close to the election, because then they turned around and did the same damn thing, and they should have just, they didn't need to let that happen. And they didn't, they could have made it happen. And they just kind of, I think they allowed the Republicans to do that, where they could have forced the issue and they probably would have had the vote and they would have kept those 2 seats. So that's why a lot of people are fed up with the Democrats, because like, you say you're representing us, but you're not really representing us. And then you like to, and you're like, you don't, they don't want to play nice, so why are you playing nice? And I think, like, comes a point, if we're watching soccer, if Italy's playing and Croatia's taking them out at the knees, at some point the Italian players got to start taking the guys back out at the knees. Going, you got to play the game you're in, and you can't say, well, we want to play the beautiful game. Well, that's great, but you're getting your ass kicked right now. So
well, right now they are being like the other. Trump does things, and the other side. There's numerous cases. They show the side by sides of the guys. What they're saying behind the scenes about Trump, what they said when he was a candidate about Trump, they would never support him, and all that other stuff. People like Rubio and Lindsey Graham, and now Rubio wants to be his vice president. And they played the two-faced game, and now the Democrats are doing the same thing, at least to some extent, where we're not coming out and saying, what. There's no, in that sense, there's many differentiations between the two parties in other ways and in policy grounds and things like that broadly. But in terms of playing the political game, like, how are you different? You're going along with something. You're telling us something that just isn't true. You're going along with the company line. You're going along with the guy who's,
that's a really, really,
not
really
to be,
good point.
it's somewhat of an absurdity, a little bit of an absurdity, but who's the authoritarian now?
Well, and that's a good point. A lot of people were like, you've been yelling about like regular people have been yelling at are yelling at the Democrats, like, you've been making jokes about the Republicans all fell in line, did whatever Trump said, and now all of you are just falling in line with whatever Biden said, even though you all know, like, when some of that stuff came out about the governor's meeting that he had, where he was talking about how he takes a nap and he can't work past 8:00, and they were like dinners and events that he left early, and it's like, and you were part of the cover up, so to speak, like, and you're mad that all these Josh Haley and all these other guys are floating around, and you make fun of them and all that stuff, but then you just were the same, like, but it was for your guy. Well, it's different because it's our guy. Like, well, that's ridiculous. Like,
right.
But that's why I loved what happened in France. I thought it was hilarious. Like, they
took the victory from the jaws of defeat.
And the party that up in charge, no one expected that. And all of a sudden that the labor, or the I forget what they call it, because it's a very liberal wing of that country, is now in charge, because the other two were fighting, and they didn't realize that the other guys basically did an end around and ended up getting power.
Well, that's a whole nother story of why we should probably have a parliamentary system in this country.
And I wish we did, because I love the fact. Could you imagine Trump, Reagan, Bush, Obama, Clinton, any of them having to do what the PM has to do in England? Go in the middle of like that tiny little room, because that room is small. That room that the president has to hang out. There's like guys behind him. It's like they're at like a high school basketball
hollering
game.
at him.
And they're hollering at him, and they're throwing shit. And I love watching. I love that, like,
chamber,
because you know what, that really does. I don't care if you're the prime minister of England, like, you're in that room, you're just like, you're at a pub, and you're just like, you might as well get penis and go play darts or something, because it's so they don't respect you or your position, because you know what, they're gonna. And I almost wish that we would have this, like, like, instead of the guy being like isolated in a house down the road, that he has to spend more time in front of. Imagine if he had to go into the house more often to argue and this is the thing. Wouldn't that be great?
I've owned up to being the Democrat and everything like that, and I feel as if when I come on here and I say the things that I'm saying, I would say that if the hardcore Democrats that I knew heard me say these things, they would be mad for dissing, going against the company line, doing things to damage. Like, look, this is what the real world sees. This is what the regular people see who aren't in the small Democratic bubble. These are the people who are at. I am somewhat like-minded to the people who are on the fence in this election. The people who are, because if you're not making the case that you're different from the other side, and if you're doing the same shit, and if you're telling them, blowing smoke up their ass about this thing, then what's the difference? What's the difference? And you're just not making the case. And I'm pretty sure most of them, if and when they see this, will be mad with me for saying the shit that I said. Up
Agreed.
until the time that maybe if Joe and his family can convince Joe Biden to stand down, they'll be mad at me.
It's again. I go back to that. Like this was one of those things that just pissed me off the other day because like what's his name? Author of The Shining.
Stanley. Is it Stanley Kubrick?
No. This God, I'm drawing Stephen King.
Stephen King was The Shining. He lives here in Sarasota.
So cool. So he came out and said something about Biden should step down, and Democrats were attacking him like, well, we think you're too old to write books. And I'm like, well, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. We're not saying that Joe Biden has to go be put down.
If it takes you a year to write a book, you can have a few momentary lapses and still come back to it.
Because he's not running. He's not in charge of the country. He's not running the military. He's not in charge of like the border. Like it's not the same thing. Like this isn't ageism. This is not ageism at all. It's not like we're saying that. I mean, I think we should be saying that anybody over the age of 75 should not even be allowed. Like, I'm sorry, if you're going to start if you're running for president, let's say you won the first term and now you're going for reelection. And if you're going to be older than 75 in your second term, you shouldn't even be allowed to run for a second term. Like they've got to come up with a way to change the rule.
New rule.
And it really should be, and I think they should really also grandfather it in with, because you're not going to be able to pass it otherwise. Grandfather it in with like the Senate as well. I care less about the Congress because there's 8 billion of them in the Congress. But in the case of the Senate, there's only 50. There's only 50.
Oh, yeah, we got people who are in their 90s. I think now
it should not. They should have a similar thing because these are smaller bodies. Like it should be the rule for the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme Court. Like moving forward,
the Supreme Court should be on terms, please. Automatic terms.
Yeah,
and
I think
every president should get like a couple nominations, and that's it. And
they should be rotated out over after a period of time, or if it's not a lifetime appointment, give them 12 years or something, and that's it. And then you're out. I don't care if you get elected when you're 5 or 30 or 70, but you get 12 years, and then you can go be a professor at Cambridge.
It's not like they get better at the job.
Well, no, but I mean, I would prefer that they almost get
federal judges, I think, like bankruptcy judges and things like that, where they get they're appointed for 14 years or something like that.
And then that's it.
All the other federal judges, like in the district courts, appeals courts, and the Supreme Court, they're lifetime appointments, and that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, some of these folks. The one guy, I forget I forget who it was, but like the guy had been in it was like I forget how long he'd been in the Senate. Like I don't even know how long Mitch McConnell's been in the Senate, but like it's just ridiculous. Feinstein, they were rolling her in a wheelbarrow.
Right. What was going on there? Right,
like that. I mean, and again, I don't know, like
Mitch McConnell's still around.
At some point, if my father, hadn't gotten sick, I probably would have had to say to my father, and I have to say this to my mother someday, like, okay, it's time for you to stop driving. You're not driving anymore. And it's not because I want to take their independence away. I realize that's the worst thing that happens to you when you lose your ability to drive. But at the same time, but I also don't want you getting lost and driving to, the diner.
Driving is important, and so is running the free world.
But it's but at some point, as a member of the family, you have to think about what's that person, and they can't do that anymore, and that's where we are. And I mean, it's just, I mean, to be honest, I don't think Trump is not nearly as bad as is Biden is, but like he can't remember
He's
half
only
the
as
stuff
bad.
that he
Trump's only as
says.
bad as the people around him.
But I'm like, the funniest thing about it is, and this is the difference between the two parties, because at least there are Democrats saying that he should step down. There's nobody on the Republican saying that have any concerns with anything about Trump. Like none of them are, if they do, they all quit and they're no longer like this is their last term or whatever. I mean, like he's literally at one of his lovely events and he's like, hey, it's Johnny Jackson, the guy who did my cognitive exam and he got the name wrong. Like you literally did not know the name of the guy that gave you a cognitive exam. You got his name wrong. Like, and nobody said anything about it. Like it was like, oh well, he was just being funny. He was just being ironic. I'm like, no, he's old too. Like he's had a rough couple of years. Like he's not like And he lost his golf courses in New Jersey lost their liquor license, so he can't sell. He doesn't drink, but he can't make money off the bar at his golf courses in New Jersey. They took his liquor license away.
Well, I'll tell you, with those two guys,
because he's a felon. He's a felon.
Those two guys running for president, neither of them may drink, but the rest of us are doubling down on our efforts.
Yeah, we did a podcast last night. We talked about similar stuff, and the one guy got up in the middle of the podcast and went into the fridge in the studio that we have here and got a beer because he was just I needed a beer.
Stronger than that.
That's the one thing. If you were up here in Niagara Falls,
antidote for this shit.
I'm telling you. So,
oh man,
I don't know. It's so. I guess let me ask you this: what if you were now in charge of all of this? How would you handle? Well, no, okay. If you couldn't quit, they changed it to your desk.
Yep.
How would you proceed if you were the chief guy that could make the call? How would you handle this?
Well, if I was Biden, I would step down.
If you had the ability to, what would be what you think should happen?
Well, I somehow it should be opened up to several people to come in and stand in as president and also, renominate for vice president. I think the floor should be basically open. I mean, what you described was fine. In terms of people coming out there. I listened to this interesting thing from James Carville, the political guy, and he wants to have the Democrats, he wants them to go and have all these town halls run by by Clinton and Obama. Go run all these town halls or whatever like that. And then if we have a candidate, what's that?
Which Clinton?
Bill, the former presidents.
Okay.
Not Hillary.
That's only slightly worse idea than having Hillary run a town hall.
But it's just the idea of kind of getting everybody together and doing that. And I'm like, the town hall is the part that to me was, to get Democrats shit together, but also to go around, to have these opportunities for the new slate of candidates to introduce themselves to everybody. And they have enough time if they crack the whip on this thing to do that, invite them in, and then have the same, like you said, proceed at the convention with each of them giving the speeches and letting the delegates choose the candidate. I mean, that's what I'd say. I don't want a coronation. I think she's an awful candidate for one, but I don't want a coronation of Kamala because she's really run for nothing before. And
that's my problem because you're the vice president.
She's already running right now. I mean, if Biden she is running.
She's running for vice president.
She's the likely successor here.
But at the same time, there really wasn't a primary.
No. Everybody gave up. When the one guy from Congressman from Minnesota, Dean Phillips, said somebody should stand up and run. Nobody stood up and run. He said, okay, well, I'll stand up and run. And he basically got laughed out by everybody else. I mean, he may not have been the greatest candidate either, but I was looking up his candidacy and everything like that. I would have joined the guy and supported it to run against Biden before, because you needed to have. You needed to have somebody running against him.
I said it before we started recording that I don't think they should leapfrog Harris, but I also don't think that she should just be I dubbed the presidential candidate. I think I don't want them to not let her have her chance, but I think we need a mini intense primary that they do at the convention, or maybe you do have a few town halls as well. And
CNN will televise anything; they don't care.
like do do something and make all those. You've got enough. You have enough structure within your political systems that you can organize something in a day and a half in Poughkeepsie or Iowa or wherever it is you want to do it, and have some places where people can, and even if you got to bring in, like I feel you've got with the delegates, you have a quick way to do it, but I don't think it's Carville's that far off with the concept of letting the some regular people have a say when I don't know how to do that.
Involving the public somehow, and I think he was talking of it more
You
of
know,
kind of like building up the Democratic Party, but I'm imagining doing something like that as part of this process to get everybody,
if you could have,
make it
if
look
you
more like a
let's
democratic
say there were
process.
6 people that threw their hat into the ring, if you could do a quick debate, I'm sure you could organize it. Have a quick
Okay, let
debate.
me list out the
You know,
likely ones, and you tell me which ones, yay or nay, or rank them in order. So we have Newsom. Uh,
do I
Prit-
think he will?
no, who's the
Should
best one? Who would be
oh
the
okay
preferred one, or most likely in terms of most likely to win, right? The
okay.
best candidate to win. Newsom, Pritzker, Whitmer, Shapiro, Pennsylvania, um, and Kamala, and the last guy I'm going to throw in my own person's name here is the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear.
I think you do.
Let's do reverse power ranking. Who's the last? Who's the last lowest
Personally,
ranked?
nobody wants a California Democrat, so
Yeah, I
Newsom's
would go
out.
with Kamala out number one.
I
I would
think
say
Kamala and
Gavin out
Newsom
number two.
are both at the bottom. I don't know enough about Prishnik. I don't know enough about him.
Yeah, Beshear, I like him. He's a good guy.
Uh, the Kentucky governor's an interesting one because it does bring you the ability to win Kentucky, which is not a state you normally win if you're a Democrat. I think from a practical standpoint, though, I would recommend that if my ticket would be Whitner as the presidential candidate and Shapiro from Pennsylvania as the VP.
Wow.
Because I feel like you get Pennsylvania, you'll win Pennsylvania, and you also have a Senate person, and you have a governor. I hate it when it's 2 governors or 2 senators.
Well, Whitmer and Shapiro are both governors, so.
Oh, Shapiro's the governor of
Yeah,
Pennsylvania?
he's the
I thought
governor
he was
now.
the
Yeah, he
senator.
was the attorney general. Now he's the governor.
I hate it when you have 2 governors on the ticket. I feel like you always need you need one person to be a governor. I think it was
What
one
about
person to be
Raphael
governor.
Warnock from Georgia? Not seeing it.
No, I don't know
Okay.
if I feel like if you get 6 people that throw their hat in, unfortunately, you need them to probably be the president and the vice presidential
The only
candidate.
problem is, with plucking
You know.
plucking a senator or another governor and a senator, you're almost relegated with the senator to going to a pretty safe Democratic state. Because you
Right.
don't want to have to open. The Democrats won't want to politically open that up to losing.
So the
seat to
Georgia
somebody else.
senator, one of the Georgia senators, is a good idea because Georgia's a key state that you're trying to keep.
Right.
In your so to me, I think it's practical. I think it's like, because more than likely, if they're on the ticket, you'll win their state. 9 times out of 10, that's what happens.
What about Joe Manchin? Even though he's kind of opted out of the party.
I don't. I think if I was a Democrat, I wouldn't trust him.
I'm okay with it. He's a little bit of a,
It's
one of
not
those guys
the
who's been around too long and all that other stuff.
he's not gonna he's not gonna run for it. So I like the idea that even though I think that they will probably end up picking, if there is a thing and there's 5 or 6 people there or 7 people, the president, one of the person who gets the ticket will pick one of the other people as their VP. unless they went off task, went off and did something crazy, like picking them, like, what's his face from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, or like, it could be something crazy as hell too. Like, they throw Michelle Obama in as the vice presidential candidate. Who knows? Like,
I don't want to go back. This
I
is all
agree.
me. If
I'm
you're
not
making the
saying
change
I
now,
want.
this is
I
all
don't.
about out with the old and
I
in with
don't.
the new.
I don't want that.
I don't really care about Michelle Obama. Like, you could,
I don't want that either. But I wouldn't be surprised, like, if that they didn't go. She doesn't want to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's something weird like that for the VP candidate. But I don't think it'll. I don't think it'll be Harris. I don't think it'll be
or
Newsom,
George Clooney,
or George Clooney. So I think it's going to.
Clooney.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's some variation of. I don't think it's the Pennsylvania governor. I think Kentucky and Michigan make an interesting ticket.
Right.
I think those two are, or like I said, I think it's going to be definitely a swing state.
Amy Klobuchar?
I don't like. I don't think anybody. She's nobody likes her. I think she's smart. But she just
Dems are in this job.
People don't like her though. Like, she's just not she's not likable. She wasn't good on stage.
She's not as bad as Hillary.
No, but she's not. I think she's very qualified, but I don't think she's very likable. She doesn't do well in debate situations. Like when she was there before. I love Mayor Pete, but people don't like him because he's gay. So I hate to say it, but I think that guy would have had quite the career in politics if he wasn't gay. I hate to say it, that's terrible. I don't care, but I think a lot of people just
not done yet.
Yep. The buddy that I was talking to yesterday, he said he said an interesting concept. He said the first gay president that we will get in the United States, it'll have to be a Republican.
Not Abraham Lincoln.
I don't. Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, outwardly, like,
oh, I'm sorry.
Like that would be the only way. Like, because the Republicans will be like, well, yeah, but see how.
Like, I don't care if he was.
I have many gay friends. Like, that would be the Republicans.
Jokes that I've heard. So
I've heard that. I've heard that story before.
You've heard those stories too. So
I never asked him. I didn't when I.
Saw him. We're old, but not that quite old. But I bet you Biden probably knew him.
They probably went to high school together.
Probably graduated. They knew each other when the Dead Sea was only 6.
So my God.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What a wonderful thing. Well, thanks for taking all the time today to chew through that. I know people are chewing through this thing, I think, themselves. I just.
How likely do you think, out of 1 out of 10, how likely do you think he's out?
I think it's more than 50% that he gets out.
I'm hoping that it's that high. I'm hoping that it's like 70 or 80. And I'm hoping something happens. I'm hoping like something happens, like someone he has another moment, or something gets leaked that's not public, that something needs to come out. And you gotta get, like, I hate to say it, like, you got to get the Joe Scarboroughs of the world to say, we respect what you did.
Right.
Your time is done.
Mika's got him all tied up there. He's. I think originally he was more like that, and then he went home, and Mika.
Well, he's got to go home with her. So she's got to, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I think she's a very intelligent woman and everything. I was just joking. Like, he's got to go home, and like, you know what? I know what you said to me on the air. Like,
gotta live with that. He's got to live with it.
My wife many years ago had the opportunity to work in my building, and she was like, "I am not working in your building." She worked in the same school district as I did, and she had to pick a building because she was being involuntary transferred, and she said, "I am not working with you. I'm not driving with you in the same car."
I suggest to Biden he does what the British Royals do.
That would be great.
And drink baby's blood.
Oh, I didn't realize it did that. Oh, you mean the Royals? Yes,
the Royals. Yes,
but they all evolved.
Queen Elizabeth made it to 99. Yeah. That and a couple corgis dogs instead of that stupid dog, that stupid German Shepherd, Rin Tin Tin, whatever the dog's name was. The Biden
was biting everybody.
Yeah, little corgis, cute little ones. That and baby's blood. I don't know. I think the Queen made, I think she proved the best way for endurance. If I could be
All right.
serious for a moment.
Yeah. That's
Oh
great.
man, I don't know. It's just it's so sad this year. And the whole thing is at the end of the day, I don't know, like I, maybe when I was younger, I thought more aspirational and things like that. Maybe when Obama was the most, you know, Obama and Clinton, at least, they kind of made you feel good for a little
Yep.
bit, and I think even Reagan had a little bit of that, where he made you feel good, right?
Yeah.
Those are the candidates. They made you kind of feel good. They were kind of upbeat and positive, and
Well, they were the
we
three
we can
most
do it.
popular presidents we've ever had that
Yeah,
really crossed party lines. And it
yeah,
was because they were good speakers and they were very likable. And I think all three of them really did truly love this country. And
right,
it wasn't like about how they could make money like some of these guys that we've had. This
right,
is not even recent presidents, I just presidents in general. Those three really did believe in this country,
yeah.
and they had respect for the office to some extent. They made mistakes. They all did. Two of them of that list in particular. But I do think that they were likable and we forgave a lot because they were the kind of guy that you felt you could sit down and have a beer
Have
with.
a beer.
And,
They passed the beer test, but
you
I
know,
don't.
and, you
But I
know,
don't like now. Aside from those few where I thought, yeah, this guy, could be that when they were in office. Pretty much when it comes to voting, it's like who can do the least damage here. I am not aspirational about these guys. I am just trying to avoid the worst case scenarios. I'm not. I don't Biden, whether he annexed, Puerto Rico or Croatia, or part of the Ukraine and made it a state so we could have two more senators or whatever the hell he did. I'm not, young people may be that ambitious, but I'm just like, who can keep us from hating each other and going at each other with knives, forks, and guns on a regular basis and
and
try
I
to
don't
create
know.
some semblance of a
Yeah.
level playing field. And
I'm
that's
wondering if
about
we're
as
ever
much we
going
can
to
hope
get
for.
that candidate again, that person that will be able to unify the country. And unfortunately, I think what it will take to unify the country is something terrible is going to happen for us to unify. And we'll have to have someone that's able to unify us in such a way and maintain it. Because we've had opportunities to unify before, and then we were unable to maintain it because of policies that were enacted. And I feel like um, I don't know how we'll ever get that again unless it's something terrible. And it has to be like that right guy at the right time. It has to be an FDR who's the right guy at the worst time. Like
Was it Winston Churchill had it right with he
Winston
says,
Churchill was a terrible person. He
but he
uh,
had the Americans down pat, including the
and he
his mother,
also
who was
was
born in Brooklyn.
he was the
But
right guy at the right time
yeah, but
for
his statement
England.
about America was, America's always do the right thing after they've exhausted every other alternative. And here we are,
Yeah, here
exhausting
we
all the
are.
alternatives.
So,
Everybody, thanks for if you did tune in and you
yep.
stuck with us for a little bit of a long podcast, but it was fun. Hopefully we gave some different ideas and perspectives on it, and a little bit of dose of reality from all the bullshit that you hear from every other location and every other source that you may listen to. With that, on July 11th, the recording date of this podcast, I bid you adieu. Remember to look for this podcast, other better podcasts, and the rest of our materials at Spotify podcast, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, for they're all lying to us, and also at our website, www.lyingtous.com. Everybody, have a good one. Safe travels. Talk to you soon.